A degree. I thought I would have been first.
Yeah, I know.
Testing one.
That's what I got. The dollar, the whole one lump sum dollar amount, broken out by the, right?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's city council meeting. Before we get started, I just want to say that the parking ban goes into effect at 9 a.m. 9 p.m. I'm sorry. 9 p.m. At this time, there's no closing.
No, sir.
Once again, parking ban is on at 9 p.m. This evening. Roll call.
Councilperson Kazarian.
Present.
Councilperson McLaughlin.
Present.
Councilperson Solano.
Present.
Councilperson Figueroa. Present. Councilperson Baena. Councilperson Rosano Martinez.
Present.
Council President Ferry.
Present. All please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone.
The next item on the agenda is public comment.
I think Representative Giraldo.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening. Very familiar face.
Yeah. Joshua Giraldo, 74 Summit Street. I am here because I wanted to take a second to talk about an initiative that the Secretary of State has, Greg Moorhead. Is there anyone from the Secretary of State's office here? No? Okay. They told me about an event that they're working on and asked if I could come say a few words on their behalf. So, as we approach the monumental occasion of our nation's 250th anniversary, the Rhode Island 250th Commission, our RI 250 Commission, is diligently working to honor our state's pivotal role in the founding of the United States. Recognizing the significance of this milestone, we are reaching out to encourage the establishment of a local committee in Central Falls to actively participate in and contribute to this historic commemoration. Creating our committee presents a unique opportunity to ensure that Central Falls' distinct history is appropriately acknowledged and celebrated. By organizing local efforts, we can foster civic pride and highlight the rich heritage that defines our community. I would urge everyone on the council for their support of this endeavor, as the timeline for preparations is pressing and the impact on our community can be profound. The 250th anniversary in 2026 offers a chance for CF to shine, showcasing our heritage through various avenues such as events and activities. Your support in establishing a local 250 committee would be invaluable, and I'm confident that Central Falls can contribute significantly to the broader commemoration. Thank you all for your consideration. I look forward to the possibility of helping to bring the 250th anniversary celebration to Central Falls. And I have some written communication that I just would like to share with the clerk, if that's all right. And then I would just like to take the liberty of saying how much of an honor it is to be here in front of y'all. I have a few bills that I would really like the council support on. One of them is pushing for expanding paid leave, paid family leave, which is actually coming up for a hearing on Wednesday at the State House. So it'll be in front of the Labor Committee, and it expands paid family leave from the current 6 weeks to 12 weeks. And it's one of my big initiatives. And I have many other initiatives, some very specific to Central Falls, some statewide. But I encourage all of y'all to please consider any letters of support. I will send, once I've submitted all my bills, I haven't submitted all of them yet, but once I do, and they all have bill numbers, I'll send them out to the council. And if there's any of them that tweak your interest or you know, that you might be interested in supporting, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or pass a resolution of support or whatever. However it is you'd like to support, I can always use it.
If I may, actually, Representative Geraldo, we have
All
a
right.
resolution on the agenda for today, for that specific bill you just mentioned, it's coming family leave. So I'm.
Wonderful. I appreciate it and thank you. And if there's any suggestions for legislation or things that I can do, please, I think every single one of you have my cell phone, I have my email, please don't hesitate to reach out. Actually, we are limited to 15 bills, and I do have 15 bills exactly. But there's a carve out for city-specific bills. So if there's anything that's on your mind, please let me know. But thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Come back again when you're welcome anytime.
The next item on the agenda is approval of records, meeting minutes from January 8th, 2024 council meeting.
Has everyone glanced through the minutes over the last few weeks? Are there any questions? Any corrections, amendments? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes collectively.
Second.
First, Councilman Casciano and Franklin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
The next item on the agenda under item 5 is executive communications, Department Financial Report for December 2023. City Clerk's Office, Finance Director's Office, Fire Department, Department of Public Works. Police Department did not submit a report this month. We will double up on the report next month.
Alrighty, with that in mind, so introduced.
Under item B, consideration of appointment by Mayor Maria Rivera of Sorangel Peguero to the Central Falls Housing Authority Board with the term of expire February 12th, 2021.
We have one,
What I'd say for the record is that Sorangel had a conflict this evening and can't be here. There are questions I can answer any of her on her behalf, but the second nominee, Barbara Silvas, is here to answer any questions you might have.
I'd like to go on the record as stating that Councilman Figueroa has recused himself from voting.
thank you. So introduced.
No, because I will. You gotta go for.
Item B,
Yes, that's why it's an appointment.
Lace.
It's an appointment.
Okay, any questions on the appointment? Has everyone reviewed the communication report? No problems, is there a motion?
So
Motion by Franklin, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Arlette. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda is under item C is consideration of appointment by Mayor Maria Rivera of Barbara J. Silvas to the Central Falls Housing Authority Board with the term to expire February 12th, 2029. I believe Ms. Silvas is here.
Issue. Hi, Barbara, how are you?
Thanks.
Has everyone reviewed the resume?
Yes, I did, and I would like to thank Barbara for her involvement in the city of Central Falls, even though she retired 10 years ago. She's still involved in the city and helping in any way, shape, or form. So thank you very much for your time.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to approve this? We have a motion and a second. Second, Tasha. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Motion passes 7.
Thank you, best of luck, and welcome aboard.
The next item on the agenda is item D, a proclamation of the mayor of the city of Central Falls proclaiming the month of February 2024 as Black History Month in the city of Central Falls.
So introduced.
Next item under item E is a proclamation of the mayor of the city of Central Falls proclaiming the week of January 22nd, 2024 through January 26th, 2024 to mark National Gun Violence Survivors Week.
Again, so introduced.
Next item under item F, a proclamation of the mayor of the city of Central Falls proclaiming the month of February 2024 as National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month.
So introduced.
Next item under item 6 is new business, election of special constable pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 45-16-8, constable license renewal for Mr. Thomas Lazaire, 1072 Lonsdale Avenue.
It's just a renewal, excuse me, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Excuse me.
It's just a renewal for a constable license,
Yeah,
correct?
but you have called the name, so.
I don't think he's here.
We still need a motion. We need a motion for approval.
We just asked if there's approval. I can use the word motion for approval, but again, it's just a renewal. Is there
Yeah, no.
any discussion?
Yeah, but then you should report the name of the person who's requesting.
Albert, it's for Mr. Thomas Lazaire, is that correct?
Correct. Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Frank, a second by Megan. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
The next item is item B, cities of council sitting as board of licensing commissioners, consideration for additional licensing. We have a C variety, it's a transfer. Business name is Raza Convenience LLC, doing business at Sunshine Market, 181 Washington Street, Santa Claus. We have the applicant here, Mr. Raza Yakat. Yeah.
So we just
Good evening.
I'm not familiar with this, so I'm not really too sure what I'm supposed to say. So we just recently bought a business in Central Falls, so we just doing a business transfer or something related to that.
Yes. It's the Sunshine Market in Washington Street, yeah, they've been there for years, yeah. Any questions of, that you reviewed the applicant?
So the question would be that, so it's a transfer only, but you're gonna keep the name as Sunshine Market, or you're gonna change the name?
The name will stay as Sunshine Market, yeah. Yeah. It might change later on at some point, yeah, but at the moment it'll stay the same.
Yeah, okay.
What are the hours of operation, the same as it's always been? or-
7 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Anyone else? Everyone, I'm sure is familiar with the location, I guess, Washington, is it Lincoln Avenue?
Washington
Yes.
Street, yeah.
And Lincoln Avenue. Yeah. If there's no further questions, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Franklin, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Chair votes aye.
Congratulations with, look, with your.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next item under new business, under council sitting as board of licenses is a Class D liquor for Casimir Pulaski Mutual Aid Society, doing business as Casimir Pulaski Mutual Aid Society, 516-518 Roosevelt Ave. I do have to make a correction, this is not technically a transfer. Casimir is asking for a petition to speak to the council about extending their license.
I'd like to speak on their behalf. That organization has been around for a number of years. I know there's never been a problem. They're wonderful people. Me personally, I can vouch for them. I will be speaking on their behalf.
If I may, Council President, we do have a.
Is there someone here?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
100% correction, I guess. Not the wrong person.
Yeah, once again, there's no reason not to, like you said, it's just an extension. I guess they have to get out of that location, and until then, they like to hold on to the license until it expires, and then we'll see it from there. Wonderful organization, does wonderful things, and that's basically all I have to say.
This is Solicitor May. Do I need to excuse myself from this vote because I'm a board member of the company buying it?
I would recommend so, yes.
Thank you.
So, Council President, my comment would be that I would like that they find another place here in Central Falls so they can maintain the business here in Central Falls. Because they're looking for new.
Yeah, exactly, yeah,
So,
yeah, I would assume they would be, but yeah, absolutely, to hold their license, it would have to be a Central Falls. So. Any other further discussion?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that, I've actually also worked with the Pulaski Society in the past, at the time when it was with, Woodsec, I think his name was, and they're very organized, great people, so I would, move to, allow for the extension of the license.
Anyone else?
I'll be recusing as well, I sit on the board that purchased the property as well.
Okay,
So I'd like to go on the record as saying that Councilman Kazarian and Councilperson Lavasa are both recusing.
okay, thank you. Still four of us, have a motion to approve, Tatiana, we have a second.
So moved.
Second by Franklin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Chair votes aye. And two have recused themselves. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda under City Council sitting as board licensing is a mobile food establishment. It's a new business. Paco and Madre, Rhode Island LLC doing business as Paco and Madre. Ladies and gentlemen, out here.
Good afternoon, Chairman. I'd like to start with apologizing for my wife. She's still full-time on me, so she couldn't make it due to tomorrow's weather. So she just got out, she's in Coventry. So, yes, we are not new. We were in Pawtucket last year. We just opened last year. We're coming to Central Falls. So we wanted to be here in Central Falls. This is where I grew up and went to school.
Yeah, I have one question. When you use the word mobile, where do you expect to actually park the vehicle?
We're gonna be in the Sturbridge of America. We're gonna be right in their parking lot. They give us permission to do it right
On
now.
Roosevelt and High Street?
Yes.
Look at Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart and,
Yeah.
I got a question, to what time can we stay open? Where it's illegal with with the city of Central Falls?
I'm not sure on the mobile, Matthew, you have the, law in front of you on the mobile?
We were in Pawtucket and Roosevelt, and we used to shut down at 1:30, start getting things ready, and then we're out of there before 2 o'clock.
1:30 when?
AM?
At night.
1:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Matt, do we have?
It was right at in the
Roosevelt,
curb.
Yeah, the shop, and I run that, I'm
At
the
the auto
manager.
shop, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the manager, Rainbow Restoration. I'm in charge of that.
You find anything, Matt? Is mobile any different than,
I'm looking at the
what time do you plan on opening?
5 o'clock. We have to open after the store is closed. So it's usually we start at 5 o'clock. We'll be there like around 4, we'll start cooking, but we'll open at 5.
Yeah, they gave us permission, is that after 5 o'clock? You guys can
So
open
you're actually gonna be in their lot?
Yes,
People are gonna have to drive into the lot?
yes. We'll be able to use their parking when they leave.
Give you plenty of parking space.
up. Yeah, we got more than the shop, like she said, in Roosevelt. It was small, we used to, the cars, like 10, 12 cars, and it was like, wow.
Mr. President, section 12-175, subsection H allows the council to, permit hours from 6 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week.
There you go, midnight, okay? And it is good, Frank, please, it is good that you be off the roadway, You just heard it be told.
And that's why I brought it to you guys'
Yeah,
attention
thank-
tonight,
yeah.
because I wanna do everything legal, I don't want.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone have questions of the applicants? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Kevin and second by Meg. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Best of luck. And when do you plan on opening?
In 2 more weeks, we have to redo all the paperwork again. because we do
Don't
March.
open tomorrow.
Oh, no.
Wait, I do have a question, and I know it already happened, I'm very supportive
No,
of
no,
that.
you're good.
But why from the front, why are you moving from,
Because.
like, down the street?
Because sometimes when we come with my workers and all that,
Oh,
it
it
get in the
gets
way and all
congested,
that,
yeah.
but they want us there. They don't want the land in Pawtucket.
Yeah.
It's in the process right now. We wanna buy that little land there, so
Okay.
we're in the process of that. So it wasn't because of nothing.
No,
'Cause
yeah,
I'm the man, I'm the one.
I'm just like, you're down the street.
Yeah,
Parsley was made for
Yeah,
and all that.
that
so
makes sense.
It makes it
Okay.
easier.
But the tacos are real good, you guys.
I've had
you know,
them, so, yeah.
We got burritos.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hello.
Best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda under item C is the Chief of Education, Sarah Payton, PhD, public update on status of office and education strategy.
Good evening. It's such a pleasure to be with you all. It's hard to follow tacos, but I'm going to do the best I can. I'm Sarah Friedman, and I have recently joined the mayor's team as the Chief of Education Strategy for the city. I am not new to Central Falls, however, so my experience in Central Falls started about 20 years ago when I was given a little student's desk in the corner of someone's office at Progreso Latino because we were trying to start a school, which turned into the learning community. And my first introduction really to this community was walking the streets of this amazing city and talking to families because we needed to have 100 families sign up to start the learning community before we were approved, and I was the first employee. So my job was to go around and talk to the families of this community, and the conversations went something like, would you be interested in having your child go to our school? Well, where will it be? I don't know. And who will teach there? I also don't know. And I did a lot of listening to the amazing, amazing families of this community, and they helped to teach and grow my ability to speak Spanish, at least conversationally. But one of the things I learned from listening to the families over the last 18 years of this community is that they have given everything for their children's education, and there is no more important value in our families' lives than giving their children a chance to have less struggle and more opportunity than they had. And so when I left the learning community to go get my doctorate in education, it was with the intention of trying to come back and help figure out how to be supportive of efforts to consider the whole educational world of Central Falls outside of just the charter sector, because that's limited. I was there for a long time, and we did a lot of work of trying to figure out how to make any difference in district schools from that sector, and there's a limitation to it, but it's really important that we consider all the children in the community. And so Mayor Rivera brought me in. She feels passionately that, and has from the beginning of her administration, that education of the children is her she feels responsible for being part of helping figure out how to improve things during her tenure. So she has a really deep sense of responsibility about that. I know some of you, and I know you also share that, and it comes from a deep place of care and feeling like what's good enough for other kids, like our kids in this community deserve an excellent, excellent education, and we're not there yet. No community really is, but we have a lot we could improve. to that point, she is aware that, over decades, not just the current administration, not just the district, but all of our schools really struggle with performance metrics, and not just on the tests either. So there's a lot of ways we measure outcomes for kids, and whether we're sending them off into the world ready to compete with their suburban peers for jobs, for scholarships, for college acceptances. And the reality is that that is the world we're sending them into, right? And so we want them to be as prepared as possible when they leave the city of Central Falls to go into that college class or to apply for that job, to take that interview, and to have just as much a chance to show their brilliance as the kids they're up against from wealthier communities. I am fortunate, so when I came in, the job offer was something like, can you help us do this thing that we haven't ever done before? And also, can you help raise the money for yourself and your team, because the city doesn't have money for this. And so that was my first job. I started in August. We have successfully fundraised enough to cover my salary, as well as the fabulous and talented Desiree Delgado Pedraza, who shares that office with me. Desi, do you want to introduce you, say a thing?
Yeah, come on. Hi, everybody. My name is Desiree. You guys can call me Desi. Nobody calls me that except my mom. So I am a graduate of both Calcut and the high school from 2022. I'm also a sophomore at Rhode Island College. I study education, and I'm just really passionate about education since I was 13. To even now, I'm passionate about helping our kids and giving us the best opportunities. I'm also very passionate about giving our community voice, because I feel like we need to give our families and our students the tools they need for both the future and now, because there's no future until we address the needs of now. So thank you guys for caring so much. Thank you for listening to us.
We also have two high-skilled, very part-time consultants, Jeremy Giller and Graham O'Halloran. Jeremy has a very deep and intense knowledge of the funding formula, which is very essential as we consider the landscape of Central Falls. And he also understands education policy and has a very intense background in that. Graham is a teacher by training. He taught at the learning community for 15 years. And I just want to shout you out there, Councilman, for your sweatshirt, because thank you. And he's lovingly known as Mr. O. He was a teacher in this community. He knows a lot of families and kids. He's bilingual, but he's also been an instructional coach, an operations person in administration of schools. He really understands from the classroom all the way to operations and curriculum. Okay, so a little bit about our work so far, and I'm happy to come back and do updates as needed. We really started out by wanting to start by listening to the educators, particularly in the district schools. And part of the reason for that is my charter background and really wanting to show through action that we are not all about the charter schools. And even though I've been here for 20 years, it doesn't mean I know what it's like to teach in the district schools, to work in the district schools. And I really need to have that knowledge and do that listening work to be effective in the work that we're going to do with district educators. So we spent the first few months really embedded in the schools with the support of the superintendent and her team. We had 143 engagements with educators, staff, administrators. We had meetings with 40 community leaders who touch on work with youth in the community. So far, we've met with 40 parents and listened to them, and we've met with 20 young people, both current students and alumni. And essentially, those conversations centered around two questions. One was, what is working? What are the successes and strengths that the world should know about? Because sometimes all we hear is what's going wrong, right? And then people come around and they think they want to help make a change, and they end up throwing out something really beautiful that took a really long time to figure out. And it's incredibly important to know what the strengths and successes are and to elevate those in the public. The second question was, what are the barriers that you have experienced to doing your best work with kids over time? So we have the strength in this district of having a huge number of teachers who've been here for a really a long time. And not just teachers, but staff at every level, right? And there's a real benefit to that because they can say, like, regardless of who was commissioner, regardless of who was superintendent, regardless of who was principal in the schools, we still were up against this same barrier over and over again, right? And that's very useful to us as we think about how the city can really address the big barriers that have persisted over time that no one has really been able to address. And we've also been collecting a huge amount of data. So we asked the Department of Education, RIDE, for basically all of the available data about Central Falls that has to do with how this district has been funded over the last 30 years, who is the makeup of our students and families over the last 30 years, what have the demographics changed, what are the mobility rates, what are all the things that have been happening with our community, and what has happened with the charter sector in this community. So all the information about approved charter growth, future charter growth, but also how charter growth has unrolled since the learning community opened. From having done all of that work so far, we're only just beginning the second stage of all of that. So you will hear more in May, early May, when we have actually collected all that and finished our listening process with families and kids. But we have identified at least 4 kind of foundational pieces that we know we need to do work on. So I'm going to share them with you. The first is community engagement and family engagement. So thinking about structures that can exist citywide in the education sector to make sure that families have a voice at every level, at the classroom level, the school level, and the district level, and the state level and policymaking level. Which was really a huge piece of my work at the learning community. And I learned a lot about how families in our community, which you all know, are working multiple jobs, right? There's language barriers, there's literacy barriers, there's educational barriers, there's also experiences families bring from other countries where maybe they were persecuted for speaking up or for offering feedback, particularly to their government or to a perceived government agency like an education entity. And so we have to be incredibly intentional about how we enlist our families and make them feel welcome and safe, and that it's accessible and easy for them to be able to really say, this is what's working for my kid, and this is not. Because they have the other piece of the puzzle. When you're just seeing it as an educator and you're not understanding what's going on at home, we're missing half the picture of that child's life, right? And family engagement has shown to have incredible outcome results in terms of student achievement when it's done systematically. The second piece is looking at funding for this district and really thinking about how to make it transparent, which is very hard because the funding formula is incredibly complex, how to make it more predictable and more stable so that everyone in this community understands it and can hold lawmakers. I know Rep. Geraldo, you work hard on this every year, but can help support our delegation in the General Assembly to advocate for what our kids need. But in order to do that, it's really important for everyone to really understand how this district is funded, which is different from every other district in the state. And to make sure that we are adequately funded, right, for the needs of our community. The third thing is around governance and decision-making. And so it's time to examine, so 30 plus years ago, the state intervened, and it was a fiscal intervention, but it was also a governance intervention. So there is a board of trustees that serves now in an advisory capacity in 3 major ways. They have only advisory authority in terms of approving contracts with the teachers union, approving budget, and approving the appointment of the superintendent. They have broad policy-making power other than that, those 3 areas, but those 3 things form a huge amount of the decision-making at the foundation of what the district can do. And we heard from many teachers that what that has done over time is created a relationship with the state where it's unclear who has the final call on things and where it's really hard for the people at the district level to feel like they're in the driver's seat, that they can set focus and trajectory and stick with it over time because the relationship with the state authority tends to change. Does that make sense? Okay. And the fourth one is really figuring out, and just I'm going to be transparent with you guys, which is how I am. So when you talk to me, you can be ready for this. But there's tremendous, I would even say animosity, but mistrust between the charter sector and the district educators. There's a lot of concerns from the district side about who are the kids the charters are accepting. Is there selection bias? Are there differences in demographics? Are the high need special ed kids all in the district but not in the charters? Are charters bouncing kids out? And so part of the work that I need to lead is to have some really honest conversations as the adults in this community who are responsible for the children around real data, to say, you know what, if it's a problem, we need to fix it. We need to address it. We need to have honest conversations. Not just to have them and to make it more fair, but also to set us up to solve problems together collectively, because there are just some issues in this community where without one another across those sectors, city, charter, and district, we don't have enough economies of scale to do a meaningful piece of work for kids. But together, we might have enough kids who need one common thing that we could actually afford to do something really beautiful. But we can't do that if people can't sit at the table together. So we're going to try to address some of the foundational concerns that particularly came from district educators about charter lottery enrollment and different demographics in the different schools. Okay. Some key milestones to look out for coming up. And my ask for you tonight is to just engage with us in this work, because you're really important members of this community and leaders in this community. And I know you're probably listening to people in the community and their experiences. And so my ask is to just engage in whatever way works for you, whether it's checking in with me and asking questions or coming to some of the events we're going to be having, or any other way that might work for you. So that said, on February 27th, we have a presentation before the Board of Trustees, which is the school board in Central Falls. It's at 5:30 at Calcutt Middle School, in the Media Center. There's also a Zoom link for that if you feel like coming, but not coming in person. Between February and April, starting February 21st, actually, which is a week from Wednesday, we'll be having family and youth listening sessions. We're going to start hosting them here and see if we have enough space. And you're more than welcome to join. We can send you the dates and information, and please know you're more than welcome. In May, we're going to be sharing out broader findings from all of those listening sessions and really trying to uplift the voices of the people who live and work here, and sharing out the data we've collected. And then from there, we're going to kick off an action team that will take all those findings and the kind of broader sense of the priorities and start putting down on paper, like, okay, well, what are we going to do about it beyond those 4 things and within those 4 things I shared. Then that action team is going to come back to do some community share outs about their action plan to get another round of feedback from the broader community in November. And December, we'll have a little time for revising. And then January to June 2025, we're going to be focused on implementation, trying to sync up with the legislative session that year. And I appreciate you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Anyone? Go ahead,
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for to get involved in this and to have the desire to even raise money for you and for Desi, right? I'm not your mother, we can call you Desi, right?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much. That sounds very interesting, and I really look forward to see what going to be the result on what you plan to do. I read here that you met with several people in the community, and you are putting together a plan that's going to help to improve the student here in Central Falls. So thank you so much and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hey.
I know some questions were bubble. I know we
Totally
talked about
fine.
both
Yeah,
today,
bring
but,
it. I got it.
So one of the questions I didn't, and you might have said it, but maybe I missed it. Was it district families, like specifically, or was it like family, like the 40 families that you met with? Were they They were, district families or also charter families?
Well, we've done 2 meetings, so those 40 were across 2 different meetings. The first meeting was hosted by Progreso Latino, and it was families from every school, charter and district. The second one was an invitation from the district family engagement team to come in and run a coffee hour with families at Calcut. So that was specific to Calcut. The family meetings that the fabulous and talented Desi will be helping organize are for all families across the city from any school.
Thank you. May I continue? I'm curious if RIDE will be providing the data requested. I just think about like how much there could be on paper versus digital and what that'll look like. So that's just wondering.
I also am curious.
Okay.
Yes, I will say they're working really hard. They've never been asked for this much data in this comprehensive a way.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their own limited capacity. And so we're trying to work with them when we hit roadblocks of just having a meeting and they'll say like, well, we could go back to this far easily, but once you ask for back past that, it becomes hard. And we're like, okay, just give us up to then. So we're trying to kind of be flexible. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. And then I know that a lot of this work, is trying to figure out all of the root causes of what happens. I don't know if you are aware, but I know from working in the district, that a couple years ago, there was actually a root causes of inequity analysis that happened.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you're taking that into consideration in your, analysis and discovery.
Yes, thank you for saying that. Yeah, we're trying to be historical in the sense of building on work that's gone before. So when I first started, we did our little team really dug into that study, and then we met with Carla Vigil and her team to get a bunch of questions answered. And we're kind of uplifting their overall recommendations into like what we're doing. And so it's very aligned. We've also gotten some really good advice from them about just how to engage the community in ways that really invite all voices and particularly voices that have been marginalized in the past. So
yeah, I love that. Because I know like a lot of work went into that, and
yes,
a lot of voices were captured. So like just making sure that you guys have access to that as well.
Yeah, they're great.
And then question around the implementation piece. So I know you're like really digging into it, like, and there's going to be an action team that's coming along. Are they the ones tasked with implementing, or who will sort of be tasked with the implementation?
Yeah, no, they won't be tasked with implementing because I guess the short answer is it's going to depend on what needs to be implemented, who's going to have to do it, right? So some of it will be legislative, some of it will be administrative, some of it will be about cross-sector collaboration, but the action team is just spearheading, like pulling all of the community input together and putting on paper like, well, so what do we want to do about it? Because we really don't want to produce another report. We're not researchers, we're practitioners in our office. And so this city, one thing that we don't need is another study done about it that doesn't result in action, right? So we are very focused on just the analysis itself is not the stopping point, it's the starting point, but I want the community to be in the driver's seat of that, and rather than like people from outside the community coming in and saying, here's a smart plan for your community, right?
Yeah, that's great. And then, it just escaped me. And what does the relationship with the district look like, or what will it look like as you're hoping to implement some of the recommendations?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I would say it's evolving like any relationship, I think, like, to be totally honest, I think it started out with a little bit of concern of like, well, why is this happening? And it is hard to have a new, like, kind of big partner on the scene who like wants your time and wants to talk to teachers and so I think I've been meeting weekly with the superintendent. I started out by meeting with all of her administrative team members who were willing to and listening to them first, and then like when it came to the teacher listening process, I followed their lead about what would work best, and so they kind of picked days on the calendar to have me come in, and they had teachers on their unassigned times, and we tried to figure out the least disruptive way. So, but it's a learning process, and you know that's like really my only strength is learning, and so I try to show up and be like, okay, what feedback do you have? Because I'm sure this could have been done better, but so we're trying to have an honest relationship. Yeah.
Anything else about that?
I just want to thank you. I think this is a wonderful presentation, and thank you for consideration to improve education. And question, I think my neighbors did all ask a lot of questions.
Ask some questions.
No, I really very impressed. It's definitely going to a good direction.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? I want to personally thank you for being here and putting your time in. Best of luck moving forward.
Thanks so much.
Last question.
Yes.
The action committee, how will it be selected?
What? Being selected?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're figuring that out right now, and if you have strong feelings, come talk to me. But we do want it heavily weighted to families, youth, and educators who work in this and live in the city. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your
Trying to get you out of here before it snows.
No, you're good.
Next item?
Next up on the agenda is item D, Markham Accounting, audit results 2023, Central Falls, City of Central Falls.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Erica Lowry. I think we've all met.
I think you were here last year.
Yeah.
Same time, same place.
So I think you probably have in your package 3 different documents. You have your financial statement, you have your final communication letter, and I have a little slide deck to go through. So I'm just going to take you through the slide deck. If you have actual questions about the actual financials, like something that you went through a question, we can cover that. But I'll high level go over the financials, your results for 23, and then we'll also go over the communication letter. So again, this is for June 30th, 2023. The financial statements were issued on December 20th, and then submitted to the state before the deadline. So we'll also we're going to go over the results, the required communications, then we'll talk about any significant estimates. There was a new standard that was implemented this year, which was on technology-based agreements, very similar to the leasing standard from the prior year, where you put a subscription asset on and you put the liability on if it's more than a 12-month contract. So that was done this year, and that was a difference in your reporting. So the next part of the slide deck here just really talks about the scope of the audit. So again, we're hired to express an opinion on the financial statements that are prepared by management. We do a risk-based approach. So when we come in, we're not looking at every single transaction that happened during the year. So we meet with your team internally. We go to the internal controls that are happening in the city. Then we design our tests based on that. So when we look at our internal controls, and I know there was a question on the communication letter, so there was a change in what's presented there. So in every risk assessment for an audit, there's always risk involved. So we have to, and management override is always a risk. So that's something that's taken into account on every audit. It's not just in particular Central Falls. And with every audit, improper revenue recognition is always considered a significant and a fraud risk. So what that means is we take that into account, we look at the controls of the city, and then from that, we design the test. And that's where we spend a lot of time during the audit in those areas that have those significant risks. So during that process too, we also do fraud interviews with different personnel throughout the city. There was nothing that came to light from any of those interviews, so that's done on an annual basis as part of the audit. There were no internal control findings to report for 6/30/23, so that's a good thing. You also have a clean opinion, an unmodified opinion, that's what you want. And you have in the financial statements, it's a financial statement under generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards, and you also have a uniform guidance report in that report. So with all the federal funding you get, we have to look at all the awards that came in, what you expended during the year. If you're over 750,000 in 1 year, we look at the bigger programs, and from there we test compliance. So the one that was selected this year was the coronavirus funds. So that was the major program that was selected. And there were no compliance findings to note, no internal control findings to note as well. The one thing we do just like to bring up, cybersecurity with everything being electronic. We just want to make sure that we keep up with training the employees in the city and making sure that those policies are kept up for the year. Any questions so far? So the next part is really just taking you through the financials. So your government, you have a few pieces to the financials. So you have a government-wide statement, which is a full accrual accounting. So it basically puts all the debt on the books, puts all your capital assets on the books. That's where you'll see the new standard for the technology-based assets and the liabilities. And if you had leases, and then the lease liability. So that's on your government-wide. So as of 2023, your total assets for the city were about 58.8 million. Deferred inflows and outflows and asset and liability largely include the pension assumptions that are built in. So you have an OPEB plan and you have a pension plan, multiple pension plans. So with the standard that required the assets and liabilities to be put on the books for those, there are investment returns that get reported differently, and depending on how the market performs, they could swing one way or another. And again, those are long-term assumptions, and that's how they build your liability for the pension. So liabilities for the city as of 6/30 is about 46.8 million. And then overall, you have a net position as of 6/30/23 of 13.7 million. Last year it was a deficit of 1.5. So you came back, so you have a strong net position on the government-wide statements. Just keep in mind that there is a lot of the COVID money and the ARPA money that's being applied. So just making sure you're taking that into account, budgeting going forward. I know Mary's on top of that. So the next page, and 7 in the slide deck, it really goes over your change in net position. So it looks at the program revenues, the general revenues. So the program revenues this year were 17.6 million. Last year were about 9.5 million. So you're looking at general revenues of 18.7 million this year, and then your total expenses were about 21 million, which gave you an increase in your net position of about 15 million. So page 8 of the slide deck really goes through, this is your fund accounting. So this is what you're more familiar with when you're looking at budget to actual and you're looking at the general fund. So this is your, basically your balance sheet for the general fund. And there's a few more funds added here this year, because every year we have to look at the funds and see if they meet the definition of a major fund to present it separately and not in the back schedules. So there, CDBG 2021 is presented separately. You also have the American Rescue Fund that's presented separately, and the school building capital. And then you have your general fund, which has the total assets of about 12 million, and your fund balance at the end of the year was about 2.2 million. And most of that is committed for certain purposes within the city based on resolutions that were passed, capital, and such things. And then the unassigned fund balance for the general fund is about 586,000. And then page 9 is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So this is like your income statement for the year. So on the general fund, you had about $20 million in revenues, largely the tax base. Is a large portion of that, about 15.2 million. And then your total expenses are about 20 million, which overall you had a surplus on the general fund for 398,000 for this year.
I have a question for you. On the CDG 2021, that you had 3,503,000. Could you please break down this a little bit more? On page 8 of that.
So that would be money that's basically is an asset, and then if you see on the bottom, there's the unearned revenue. So that's the full contract, and then the unearned revenue because you haven't spent that yet. So you have the contract, and once it's expended, it would be recognized as revenue. So that's due from the federal government from CDBG funding. And then back to page 9 on the slide deck. So you just see all the different categories of the revenue. So you see the American Rescue Plan had 1.7 million. That last column that talks about other governmental funds, in your financial, there's a number of funds that roll into that column. So the detail is in the supplementary information, where you can see all the different special revenue funds of the city. And then the next slide is really budget to actual results. So this is on the revenue. So looking at tax revenue, the budget was about 15.7 million. It came in at 15.2. Any fee or non-tax revenue was budgeted for 1.7 million, and you came in at 1.9. Then the state revenue had a budget of about $2 million, and that came in at 2.9 million. And then there's some miscellaneous other revenue in those categories, with total revenue budgeted at 19.4 million, and you came in at 20.3 million on a budgetary. And the next few pages really just go through your expenditures, budget to actual, the different categories. If you look in the financials, there's a lot more detail that rolls into those different buckets, which, you know, general government might have a salary line, you know, different categories where you can see the makeup of what was up and down in those different categories. Then you have your debt service, which was, you know, about $1 million flat. And the next page here goes over just the total expenditures when we're looking at it. 19.4 million was budgeted, and the actual was about 19.9. So overall, the budgetary surplus was that 348,000. Any questions so far? Okay. The next slide goes over the net pension liabilities, just to make sure. So in your financials, your estate plans are always a year behind in reporting for the reporting period you're in. So you'll see that information in the footnotes. So the police and fire is about 25 million of a liability as of 6/30/23. The municipal plan is about 1.8 million. All the annual required payments that were required by the city were made in 23. So you're up to date on all your payments. The next slide goes over the net OPEB liability. So as of 6/30/23, 1.7 million was the liability for the OPEB. And your funding ratio came up from 36% from 24% in the prior year. So that's tracking in the right direction. You want to keep that going up. I mean, that's basically a high level overview of the financials. There's a lot of information in the financials. You have notes to the financials, which have a lot of detail in them. You also have the schedule of federal expenses in the back, and then also all the results of that compliance audit as well. Which again, there are no findings from an internal control perspective or a compliance side. You'll have two more reports in the back as well, which is your government auditing standards report, and then the uniform guidance report. So I mean, if you have questions on the financials, I can take them now, or I'm just gonna go through the general communications.
So I would like to ask a question to, maybe probably on the budget, on the total expenditure, which is, we have in the budget 19,412,499, and the actual is 19,957,991. We have a surplus of 348,960. So where the money get allocated?
So that's now sitting in our fund balance. So any surplus will drop to our fund balance.
Yeah, so that drops, so when we talked about the unassigned fund balance, that dropped into that bucket.
I just want to say at this point, it looks like the 2023-2024 budget that we approved was right in the ballpark all along. Right there all year. So that's a good thing. Thank you, Mary. You all set, thank you. You're welcome.
I have a question, it's from the letter that we got.
Yep.
On page 3, there's a statement that says, we have identified the following significant risks of material misstatement as part of our audit planning. Management override of controls and improper revenue recognition due to fraud. I specifically checked on my as to what exactly that means.
Yes. So that's always been a risk in our, like when we go through our risk assessment process, every entity, no matter what type of entity, is gonna have the risk of management override because we're making manual journal entries and those are just things that we need to consider in the risk assessment. Improper revenue recognition, I would say on 85% of clients is a significant and a fraud risk because that's where all the transactions are going through. It's where we spend a lot of time in the audit. I mean, just an easy example is we usually have that in probably 90% of our audits as a risk, unless it was a small real estate organization that had the same rent every month and you could predict it was 12 months, then there's really no risk in that. So it's not something particular to Central Falls, that it's just a new presentation that the standard required for us to bring it to your attention on those charged with governance. Any other questions?
Go ahead. In this baby, the basic financial statements and supplementary information, on page 9, there's the management discussion and analysis. It's continued from the previous page. And in other city government, it says, what was adopted in the budget, the final budget, which was $450,838, and then the actual FY23, $958,744, so a variance of $507,906. Just wondering if you could remind me, Mary, because I probably asked you already, what other city government is and why that.
So included in that number is our school funding. So we talked about, for all of the programs, the PAYGO programs, there's a city match. And as I had said earlier, the school is progressing quickly. We want to keep up with it. We don't want to hold them back due to money. So there was spending in that account that went directly to the high school.
I know you
okay, no worries.
But I try to keep up with myself.
Yep.
Thank you, Mary. And then, actually, there was something you said about the ARPA funds and like the net positioning due to ARPA funds.
Well, Joe, I just like to bring it to the attention, and I know you know that the COVID funding's over with now. Every community has to consider that, making sure that the tax base is going to support going forward all the programs that you have. So I just like to make that aware. I know Mary's very aware of it, making sure.
Yeah, and we'll go, I think on the agenda is the ARPA, and I think Erica just wants to make sure that the city isn't funding its continual programs with our funds, because they're not going to be there, the operations of
Right.
the city.
Then we have to figure out how to sustain all of that.
Right,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we'll go through that with you and, illustrate that that's not the case in Central Falls.
And then interfund transactions, so that's on page 27. It says interfund transfers totaled 41,739 for year ended June 30th. Can you just share a little bit more about interfund transfers?
So those would be any type of transfer, so like if the general fund were to cover a deficit in a special revenue fund, that would be categorized as an interfund transfer.
Is it similar to like when you, so like when I worked in the district, for example, right, like grants were on a reimbursement basis, and so like you technically spend the fund first and then.
So no, this is spending between funds,
Okay,
so
got it.
you're talking about a timing issue, which is actually your next question. But this is just accounting transactions between funds, so from the city as a whole, it has a net impact of 0, it's just moving, whether we coded it wrong, or moving transactions from one fund to another.
Yeah, it usually happens, so if the general fund paid for an expense and it should have been in another fund, it would go through that.
Is that similar to do from?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't want to spend time on that, it's very simple. And, on page 59, it's notes to the financial statements, note 12 is about commitments. I just want to say, I thought it was great that we are, we entered into a contract for net metering credits. That's for the city's buildings, I assume, and like us getting credits.
Yeah.
I thought that was really great, so I just wanted to highlight that. So thank you. And I think those are all my folds. That's it.
Anyone else?
I'm just gonna go over the communication letter just to make sure, I know you guys have a copy of it, but again, it goes over, obviously, our responsibility for the financials. We look at internal control, we don't opine on it, that's just something that's put in there. And uniform guidance, obviously, you have a number of federal programs, not all of them are tested on an annual basis. We do a calculation to determine which one is the most significant, and that would be the one that would be selected. We talked about the new standard on the technology-based agreements, so that was implemented in your financials this year. We didn't have any disagreements with management during the audit, it went very smoothly. We didn't have any difficulties getting anything. To our knowledge, there's no fraud or irregularities that we identified, we would have to bring that to your attention. And again, we're independent with the city, we have to report that as well. We did get a signed representation letter, which is dated the same date as the report. And to our knowledge, there is no other opinion shopping on the treatment of different things reported in the financial statements. We would bring that to your attention. And we already talked about the net intentional liabilities and the OPEB and the assumptions in those. Any questions?
Thank you. It sounds like we got a pretty good bill of health.
You did. You have a great team in the finance department.
I second that motion. Anyone else?
We appreciate all of her hard work during the year.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome back anytime with good news.
Have a great night.
You as
Thanks,
well.
Sarah. Thank you.
Now, Mary will speak on APA.
Yes.
Mary.
Don't worry, Mary's coming back. I just wanted to offer a quick preface. And I believe in your briefing materials, you've got specifics of the ARPA schedule that Mary's gonna walk through. I did just wanna say that what Mary's gonna walk through and what you're gonna see is a really thoughtful reflection of the priorities of the mayor. And as a result of a very rigorous budgeting process that we put in place, that Mary's put in place, and I get some credit for, but not too much. And what you'll see in the ARPA schedule is, the mayor's top priorities, right? Affordable housing, the building of our community center, One thing you won't see in the ARPA details is anything about education, but that's again a testament to Sarah Friedman's strength that she just presented, because she's raised all of this money herself, right?
That's great.
Which then allows us to double down and invest even more in the priorities of the mayor, as reflected in the details that Mary will walk through. The big concern, and I am always concerned about this myself, is are we ever going to give any money back to the federal government? And every other week we convene a budget meeting, myself, Mary, her deputy, our fund developer, the clerk's office, and we are constantly validating, we're constantly looking. We're not going to send a dollar back. We're going to make sure that everything's been sent to us is spent. Mary's going to walk through some more details on that. But it's also something that Mary and Allie, her deputy, put in place with our capital expenditures in particular, right? When I started in May, we put together like a capital sort of prioritization process over the next 5 fiscal years, where we solicited from every city department what they anticipate their capital needs being over the next 5 years, so that we have a running list of that we're meeting about every other week, constantly validating to try to make sure that when there is an additional marginal dollar to spend, whether that's through ARPA, whether that's through any surpluses that do or don't come in the operating budget, that we are as thoughtful as possible about what we're spending that on. I think the only last thing I would say is that all of the council now, in groups of 3 and 3, so that we don't violate quorum rules, now has dedicated monthly meetings with me. We'll be continuing those, but it was a suggestion from Councilwoman Baena in our last meeting, asking for some specifics for this ARPA reporting. You'll see it reflected in your briefing materials with the pie chart you asked for. Continue to bring me ideas, right? That's the purpose of why we have these meetings in 3 and 3. And I think you actually also requested the presentation from Sarah Friedman there. So what you are requesting of me, especially through those meetings, we're trying to make sure that we show you guys, because you guys are a partner for us. So with that, Mary's got all the details.
I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you because, yeah, like I had been requested, and I know every time I request something of Mary, she's like, here you go. So I appreciate you, Mary, and RJ, you know, for facilitating and making sure that the presentations get on the agenda.
So ARPA, I think in the package that we received, you have 2 schedules that relate to it. One is what we have posted on our website, our ARPA Transparency website, and that now includes the nice pie chart, which I think was a great idea. So that you can see on our website as well. And then you have more of a traditional Excel spreadsheet that'll kind of tell you the major categories that we're spending.
I want to add one thing. We haven't uploaded the pie chart yet. It's coming.
But so I think, as RJ pointed out, the biggest chunk of our money of ARPA is in 3 major areas. One, we are fulfilling the capital needs of the city, which didn't get addressed for a while. We had some old equipment, you know, we just have taken this time to revitalize our police fleet, our fire fleet, our DPW fleet, even Parks and Rec got one. So we're spending that. Those are more one-time things that we absolutely need, and it was great that we could use that money. Going forward, we're going to try and budget a more sustainable replacement of these, which is what RJ referred to. But yeah, a big piece of our capital. You can see we've committed 1.583, and we've spent almost 900,000. We have specifically identified the difference between those numbers. We're just waiting for those capital items to come in. So that's for capital. The second big initiative of the city is the affordable housing, which is the second line item on here. And again, we have $1.7 million allocated. And again, that's an ongoing, this is updated monthly. We are spending the money. It took the city some thoughtful time to figure out what we're going to spend our money on. But now that we've decided, the spigot is open and we are spending our ARPA money. So to RJ's point, we are not going to not spend our money. And the last bigger one is El Centro. So we have that money in there. That's in a couple different places. The acquisition and build out is $1 million, and then we have some Softer costs, you can see there's, some priorities in there, and that 220,000 is in there because it's a match to a USDA grant. So we didn't just put it there, we got a very healthy USDA grant to help support El Centro, and that 220 is the match for that. So we need to make sure that that is in our numbers. The other numbers you can go through, they haven't changed much, right? Those were the programs that we, just spent when we, in the very beginning of the program, but the 3 programs that I referred to earlier are the ones that we're really monitoring and really taking special care to make sure it's all good. So I can take specific questions or.
Anyone?
So thank you, Mary, for putting this together. I know one of my concerns was similar to RJ around like making sure that we're spending the funds, that they're not just, kind of hanging out in our accounts. So I appreciate the time and effort to make sure that everything's committed, because I know how all of that works, and so like it's real.
And there's federal reporting that we are required to do by April 30th, so that keeps us on track. We try everything monthly, but we have to report annually on.
Yeah.
So that happens as well.
Perfect. One question I had, and this is probably for RJ, is just around the Nonviolence Institute outreach specialists.
Yeah.
I noticed we already spent the funds that we had allocated for them, so I guess my question is, would we be considering continuing that program at some point if possible?
There was a sort of operational issue on the Nonviolence Center side, and they actually charged us accidentally when they didn't have somebody available.
Okay.
We rectified that, but in the interim, to your exact point, right, we were trying to make sure that we're spending each dollar as quickly but as thoughtfully as we could. While we didn't know what they were doing, we allocated money elsewhere, right? But I passed Zulema Gomez as the main point person with them. She's working with them to try to figure out what other money we could raise and what other ways that we could keep that partnership going. Because we did decide, based off coverage issues on their end, to spend the money elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think this was maybe a couple months ago.
That makes sense. I mean, you
Right.
have to spend the money.
Exactly, to your point.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. I just remember the program, like I remember when it was announced and I thought it was great, and so like.
Incredibly great and compelling program, but it only worked when we had somebody available to do it.
Yeah.
And like I said, there was an operational lapse on their end. But Zulema's in conversation with them to try to figure out what they can support and what's feasible.
Anyone else? Any questions of Mary? Hearing none, seeing none. With that, Mary, you are free to go. Thank you.
Thanks for all your time, I appreciate it.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Next item on the agenda is item number 7, is hearing and/or consideration of claims. We have Ms. Nicole Rafferty of 1352 Longville Avenue.
Good evening. Hi. Has everyone read the report? Nicole? Any questions? I'm just looking at the total. Matt, have you reviewed the claim? It looks like it's.
Yes, Mr. President, I did review the claim, and I review it in the sense of, is it complete and in accordance with our laws? And the amount claimed is not an issue that I necessarily look at, but I would maybe agree with where you're going on this, that I did not ascertain where the amount of $1,065 came from. I tried adding up a bunch of different costs that I saw. So
I found 900 and change, 926.
Rafferty, you could explain
So, there was an oil change that needed to be done, and I had emailed whoever I was talking to, I don't have the name off the top of my head, whoever dealt with this stuff, and I did let him know that it was, whatever that total was for the papers that I sent him minus the oil change. So I had to go to 2 different spots to get tires, because the first place that I went to told me, they could replace the rim, and then when I went to have it replaced, it said that it wasn't able to be done there, and they didn't sell rims, so I had to go to another place. So there was 2 different, receipts handed in. I may have just done the math wrong, I work 6 days a week as a nurse, so I apologize.
Human error. Happiness, sorry.
I saw $927.
There's a few invoices here, so like, there's one for the 937, like you said, council president, and then there's one for 20161.
Yeah, so I added those 2 and then subtracted the oil change from it. So I had to go to, I think it might have been Town Fair Tires, and then I also went to the Honda dealership, which they had to replace the rim and the tire, because the Town Fair Tires did not do that.
I got a question for the solicitor on the claim, because as far as I know, we have a cap to pay, when there's a claim like that. And I believe it is $300.
We do have a cap pursuant to state law on pothole claims, but this is not a pothole claim.
It was a manhole cover.
Right.
Yeah, so it was a big manhole that I ran over, unfortunately, on my way to work. Yeah.
We did have our DPW investigate, and they did find the condition to be as represented.
Yeah,
And addressed it.
I think this may in fact be the second incident of manhole cover. I suggest approving such claim at this time. Anyone else have further questions or thoughts?
No, I'll second that motion.
Anyone else? So the actual amount is $927, I believe.
Mr. President, the claim is for $1,065.
She's deducted.
What she is saying is that she added $927, and then she added to that the town fair price of the tire at $201, and then subtracted the oil change, which is a total of $1,065.
I had to get 2 tires replaced. So one tire was the 200 and then the other one was the 1,000, but obviously you guys didn't cause me to need an oil change, I just happened to be there, so I subtracted that.
You have you've highlighted $201. That was for what?
One tire, so I had
One
to,
tire?
so I had to, yeah, I know, so I had to prices and see. So I had to go to Town Fair Tire because I needed 2 tires replaced. I thought that they could just plop a new tire on the rim. However, when they tried to plop that tire on the rim, it was completely damaged. So then I needed to go elsewhere to get a new tire and a new rim, making 1,000 minus the oil change.
So 1,000 minus the oil change. I make a motion to approve said claim. Is there a second?
I just second, yes.
Anyone else? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Did you hear that?
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, best of luck, and very sorry for your misfortune.
Somebody from my office will contact Mr. Chester.
Thank you so much.
Next item on the agenda is Mr. Wilson Pizarro, 141 Summer Street, 11-2.
Hi, good evening. So you hit pothole?
Yeah, I hit a ball.
I reviewed that earlier. Anyone have any questions at this time?
One question. The invoice that we have is for $171.61. And the claim is for $321. So just wondering a little bit less, unless.
When I went to get a new tire, Town Fair Tire, they told me my rim was messed up, and the belt, the wheelbarrow, it was messed up. So they couldn't fix they gave me the tires, but they couldn't fix the wheelbarrow and stuff. So I took it to my mechanic and he fixed the wheelbarrow.
Do you have that invoice?
I put it in there. This is all we have, sir.
So it's not in here, do you have it right now?
It was $150 for the receipt. I gave it to the person upstairs. This is all right.
We don't seem to have that invoice.
I left it downstairs in my house, but I don't got it with me, because my girlfriend, she went to her house to.
Okay, is there a way that we can, like, approve contingent upon using the other receipt? Is that fair?
No, I brought it downstairs and I gave it to the lady, and she told me.
It's just not in our documents, so we can't see it, so it technically isn't in the documents that we have. So if you're able to bring it in again, I'm sorry. Like, I would move to approve the claim, for the cap that is 300. I know it's 321, but we do have a cap that is 300. So we would approve it for 300 contingent upon you bringing the other receipt to total the 300. So I move to do that.
So you said that receipt was brought here?
Yeah, I brought it here.
So it's downstairs?
So, yeah, so he brought it, but it's not in our document, so he has it in his
No,
car.
I understand.
Yeah,
but
his car is just not here.
Listen to me, the city clerk does not have a copy of it, it was not brought in apparently. You said it's in your car also?
Yeah, the receipt is in the car.
And your wife has a car?
Yes, she does.
Did she take a picture on the phone?
She's right now, she's for the whole day right now.
Yeah, I'd like to actually have the invoice.
When it's turned in, can it get submitted?
She's coming back.
But that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
like, and if it's not submitted, then we would only approve
Up to that
up
one.
to this invoice,
Yeah.
the 171.61.
What's with him, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
You have a motion,
Those
second.
conditions that you
Yeah,
mentioned.
okay, so.
Yeah.
Yes, Matt?
You mind if I just clarify the motion? for the
Absolutely,
record, the
yeah.
public record, so the motion would be to approve the claim in the amount of $300 contingent on the clerk's office verifying that the second receipt is sufficient to meet their requirements. And if that is not provided, then the claim is approved in the amount as presented in the amount of $171.61.
Yes, you understand that? Okay, thank you. With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item 8, schedule of bills, hearings, and of consideration. Under A, a resolution supporting the Central Falls 2024 legislative agenda, including HB 7109, HB 7186, SB 2047, and important changes regarding education funding presented by Councilman Ferry.
And those actually are the ones that Josh has mentioned earlier this evening, Representative Geraldo. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
I need a motion, Mr. President.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Megan, and
I'll
second
second.
by Kevin. Again, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Motion passes 7-0. Under item B, a resolution designating the week of February 7th through February 14th, 2024 as congenial heart defect awareness week in Central Falls, presented by Councilperson Diane.
Is there a motion?
Oh, sorry, do we want to, I've introduced a few, they're all pretty different, but it's up to you guys if we want to, try to
Do collectively
doing
or not?
collectively. I can share a little bit about what they are. So, CHD, is one of the, is a heart disease, and it's a leading cause of birth defect-related deaths worldwide. And so I just wanted to recognize it. One, it's important to recognize, and two, there's a woman by the name of Northern Consuegra. She's been involved in Central Falls. Her son is actually, as she calls him, a heart doctor. And so wanted to recognize and bring awareness to this disease. And then also the other resolution was one that Rep. Geraldo also mentioned around expanding temporary caregiver insurance program. As someone who just went through the TDI and TCI process, I seriously agree with expanding paid leave for new parents or people who are providing caretaking or being caretakers. Then also in alignment with Mayor Rivera just proclaiming Black History Month, February as Black History Month. And then there's one expressing condolences on the passing of Glenn LaRock Jr., who was my neighbor and also a friend. He passed away in June. And then a resolution recognizing Pamela Nava, who is a senior at Central Falls High School. She scored her 1,000 points. It's no easy feat to do that. I played basketball at our post, but didn't make it. So definitely wanted to recognize her.
Go back and try again.
No, it's okay. I'll stick to Mujerito. And then lastly, a resolution recognizing Diego Alcantar and Tuxpan Taqueria on their James Beard nomination for Best New Restaurant. Wanted to congratulate them as well formally. So those are the resolutions that we are considering.
Thank you. So those are resolutions D through G, correct? Collectively, looking for a motion. Motion by Councilman Solano, is it second? Second. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next item is item H, ordinance amending the redevelopment agency ordinance. Council President Ferry by request, second reading.
Has everyone reviewed such? We do have, okay. No one's okay. Is no one here?
I'll make a motion to approve or.
Okay, Kevin, thank you. Second, Raphael. Again, any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call vote.
Councilman Kazari?
Yes.
Councilperson Lavasa?
Yes.
Councilperson Solano?
Yes.
Councilman Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilperson Baena?
Yes.
Councilperson Rosado Martinez?
Yes.
Council President Ferry?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Next item on item I is ordinance amending Appendix A of the Code of Ordinance Federal Zoning adopted October 15, 2007 by renumbering uses 48 and adding mini storage and self-storage to Article 3, use and dimensional regulations, and to Appendix A of the zoning ordinance. Council President Ferry by request introduction.
So introduced.
Next item on the agenda is adjournment.
Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Bain. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned at 7:32. Thank you.
Chief of Staff.
Yeah.
Love your report. Parking ban starts at 9.
AM or PM?
PM.
Okay, because earlier it was mentioned AM,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to clarify.
No, very good question. It's up on social media.
Oh, no, I knew the answer. I knew the answer. I was just reiterating that some people didn't get that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Appreciate it. Stay safe tomorrow. We win.
Probably as far as about 12 or 16 hours. Just depends on what.
Appreciate it. Do you know Lorraine?
No, I haven't been there yet.
Lorraine, this is Major Carroll. He's my new deputy. So
Nice to meet you. Congratulations.
maybe I could work a few hours less. So.
There's nothing wrong with that.
You'll text me.
Good night. Appreciate it. See you.
Yeah, you too.
Oh, my parents. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Hi.